Hello, everyone, and welcome to this adventure on the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Minnesota Functional Neurology and Chiropractic in Minneapolis, Minnesota, found at mnfunctionalneurology.com. Dr. Jeremy Schmo, much respect and thank you so much. It is also brought to you by Revive Treatment Centers, which is located in Denver, Colorado, and found on the web at revivecenters.com. Dr. Joshua Flowers, Dr. Charlene Godet, Dr. Manuel Nunez, very amazing team of functional neurologists and nurse practitioners and more that come together to form a really cohesive team for their patients. Thank you guys so much as well.
And if you would like to join us on the adventure and become a sponsor of the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast, please join us. We are looking for sponsors, and you can find out information on being a pre-roll or post-roll sponsor online at feedabrain.com/sponsor.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. And if you enjoy this show and would like to contribute as little as $1 or $2 per episode, head over to our Patreon page. That's Patreon, patreon.com/AIBI for Adventures in Brain Injury.
And drop a loony or toonie in the bucket.
Loons and tunes.
Excellent. You are about to launch. You are set to launch How to Feed a Brain, Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair. Your first book. How do you feel about this?
My first book, 6 years in the making. This is a big deal.
Well, a lot of other people think it's a big deal too. I want to read what Dr. Perlmutter said about this book. May I?
Please.
Kevin Ballister contextualizes incredible adversity as a learning event and then transcends to the next step to share his knowledge. His ideas are absolutely in line with current neuroscience and have the added validation of personal experience. What kind words from a brilliant mind in neuroscience.
A leader in neuroscience. I mean, that means the world to me. That, like, the leading voice in neuroscience today says that my book is completely in line with current neuroscience.
Isn't that great?
Means so much. I mean,
I think you're onto something, Kevin.
I think we all are, you know.
The trials that we went through when there was not much information available 6 years ago, it's going to change. This is going to change. People are now going to have a handbook. How do I recover? How do I feed a brain?
That's exactly why I wrote this book and why I created a podcast. I mean, everything I've done is to create the resources I wish I had, you know?
Yes.
So creating How to Feed a Brain, boom, I wanted to know how to feed a brain. While I was recovering, I couldn't really read very well. So I listened to lots of podcasts. And that's exactly why we created the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. And thank you so much for joining me on this adventure.
Oh, I'm pleased to be on the adventure for the same reason that you do this work. It's information so valuable. People need to know. And hey, you know, perhaps when we get a little moment of time, we record an audio book. How to feed a brain on audiobook.
Oh, I plan to, actually.
Of course
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Yeah, that will be coming out.
Oh,
it's
terrific.
Totally going to happen. Yeah, so I'm very excited for this episode. We got Dr. Terry Wahls, and
Let's go.
That's happening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 27th episode of the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. My name is Kevin Ballister. I am creator of AdventuresInBrainInjury.com and FeedABrain.com, and soon to be released How to Feed a Brain, Nutrition for Optimal Brain Function and Repair. I guess I'd be the author of that and the creator. And with me is my co-host, Michelle Malmberg, who is an acquired brain injury survivor and amazing co-host.
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning to you as well.
So today I'm extremely excited to interview a hero of mine and somebody who's just done so much for the world and for me. Why don't you tell us about Dr. Terry Wahls?
Well, I'm going to give her a feminine label. I'm going to call her your heroine. Just because I love words. So yes, you're just a little bit excited about this interview, just a little bit, and it's wonderful. So yes, I would like to introduce Dr. Terry Wahls. She is a very busy clinical professor of medicine at the University of Iowa. She's conducting clinical trials and is also a patient with secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. And we love it when doctors are patients too, don't we, Kevin? There's so much depth
They
there.
get it.
So her MS had her confined to a tilt-recline wheelchair for 4 years. And I'm sure she has a lot to say about that. But Dr. Wahls restored her health using diet and lifestyle. It's a program she designed specifically for her brain, and she pedals her bike to work each day, which is really exciting. So inspired by this, and the world then found out about her work and her recovery through the TED Talk, much like I did. And she went on to write an initial book, which I bought years ago, Dr. Wahls, Minding Your Mitochondria. And then that was rewritten and published as the Wahls Protocol, How I Beat Progressive MS Using Paleo Principles and Functional Medicine, which I had to have a copy of as soon as it was released. Then second, the Wahls Protocol, A Radical New Way to Treat All Chronic Autoimmune Conditions Using Paleo Principles. And then third, the Wahls Protocol, Cooking for Life, the Revolutionary Modern Paleo Plan to Treat All Chronic Autoimmune Conditions. And I am so thrilled that diet, food, is becoming frontline medicine. There's so much more information at www.terrywahls.com. That's TerryWahls.com. And what's captured our attention, Kevin, and thousands of others, millions perhaps, she's conducting clinical trials that test the effect of nutrition and lifestyle interventions to treat MS and other progressive health problems. She also teaches the public and the medical community about the healing power of the paleo diet and therapeutic lifestyle changes that restore health and vitality to our citizens. Oh, that's empowerment right there. I love that. She hosts each August a Wahls Protocol seminar where anyone can learn how to implement the protocol with ease and success. We can follow her, as can our listeners,
and we're
on
going to
Facebook.
talk about that a bit.
Oh, we are. Yes, we are. Many details there. Facebook, Terry Wahls, MD. Go on and like that. And her Twitter handle is @TerryWahls. So there are many links on her website about her research trials and the MS diet study and the Parkinson's diet study, and there are surveys online. So people can really become involved and pass this information along to people in their families, their friends, people who need to know about recovering their health and empowering themselves. So let's get to meeting Dr. Terry Wahls and into the depths of this interview.
Let's do it. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Wahls. As you can see, we are very excited to have you here.
Well, thank you very much. It's just such a privilege to be able to do this. because I have such a debt of gratitude because, 10 years ago at this moment, my future was so clear. The conventional medicine wasn't stopping the decline. And I had, and my family had expected that I would eventually become bedridden, possibly demented, and possibly stuck with this intractable, horrific pain. But, of course, fortunately, we're able to create a program that, restored my health, got me up. And so because I have this immense debt of gratitude, I'm trying to let others know that things are not as grim as they think.
It's so true. And I think you got up to prove that. You got up into my backyard and celebrated your return to walking by and movement by climbing on the back of the horse and trotting through the Rocky Mountains.
Oh my God. Dr. Embry's had me up to Calgary a couple of times. And when we do that, we take a side trip to Banff. My wife and I stay at one of the lovely, lovely hotels there. Yes. And really enjoy the abundant beauty in Banff. And of course, I grew up on a farm, grew up with horses. It was just wonderful when the first time I was up there, I said, "Oh, Jack, what do you think? Can I ride horses again?" And she said, "Well, yeah." And so that was really, it was a wonderful trail ride. And whenever next time we went back, we went on a different, slightly longer trail ride. And it is just such a gorgeous part of your country.
Amen to that. I recently was up there. Me and Michelle got to spend some time together, and we went to where did we go? We went to Lake Louise.
Oh yes, Lake Louise.
Man,
yeah. That is. We were up there walking around that as well. It's like, wow, that is just so exquisite.
It was beautiful.
Yes.
Well,
the funny thing was, let me interrupt, Kevin, because
the
funny thing was when Kevin and I first started talking, and of course you figured into our very early conversations well over a year ago, because food, lifestyle, it all brought us together. And of course, the common denominator was Dr. Terry Wahls. And that was, Kevin was beginning the work on his book, How to Feed a Brain. And so I joked, I said, you know what you really need to do? What you really need to do is be riding horses with me up here in the Rocky Mountains and Dr. Terry Wahls.
Well, that was good advice.
Well, it's sort of unfolded. I mean, Kevin did make it up to Calgary and into the mountains with me. We were only, sadly, missing you and a horse, or 3 horses. So next time we are one step closer, but we have you here on the podcast, and we're so thrilled. So let's get into this. So your life
absolutely
turned around radically with now, if I recall your TED Talk, I mean, you started researching what you could do for yourself, diving into the published medical literature on nutrients. And then after looking at all these bottles upon your countertop said, well, if I'm getting nutrients from a bottle, why can't I get the same nutrients from food? And voila.
It's really very interesting. I had been a vegetarian for 20 years thinking that was the best nutrition. And then one of the paleo diet because I'd read the science. Okay, this made sense. Did not recover. Read all that basic science, slogged through that, started adding various vitamins and supplements, which I could tell helped me because if I didn't take them, my fatigue was much, much worse. So
do you mind if I back this up a little bit? So you were confined to a tilt-recline wheelchair at one point.
Yeah,
and
4 years.
You continued to go online and research everything you could about your condition.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Go ahead.
I really felt like conventional medicine wasn't stopping the decline.
Right.
And I knew that animal studies would be about 20 years ahead of clinical studies.
Right.
And so at first I was always reading about drug trials. And then fortunately in 2004, I thought, that's crazy. Because it'll still be a long time to get those drugs. So then I sort of stumbled into reading about vitamins and nutraceuticals and supplements and expanded the diseases that I was reading about, Alzheimer's, Huntington's, ALS, and a variety of other neurodegenerative diseases, and would gradually add, various vitamins and supplements that I could tell were helping the fatigue, but, I was still declining. And so when people and I love the paleo diet, but it's not enough. Particularly the way most people practice it. You can still have a lot of gaps in your nutrition.
Let's talk about those gaps, please, either now or later.
Yeah. So I'm really happy to do that. And how I put this together is there are some really wonderful 3 articles that I'm very, very impressed with. 2 by Borman on the micronutrients that were important. So that's the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, particular essential
What's his
fatty acids.
name?
Bourmann.
Excellent.
Right.
Okay.
And
Thank
then,
you.
and so then he had another article, follow-up article, on the macronutrients, like how many grams of carbs and fat and proteins that brains needed. And I think the article was in the Journal of Aging. And so I was using that along with some of the basic science to say, okay, these are the vitamins and supplements that I need to pay attention to. So I had a robust list. And then I just had this big aha moment, like,
Mm-hmm.
I should sort of figure out where these nutrients are in the food supply. And so my resource there was Linus Pauling's Institute of Micronutrients at the University of Oregon, I believe.
Yes, yes.
Great resource. So, I have my list of, there are 20 nutrients I was really keen on. And so I go to Linus Pauling, read about the nutrients, read where they're in the food supply, and I reorganize, or I should say, I structure my paleo way of eating through this lens of maximizing the micronutrients. And so things I was really zeroing in on, of course, were the essential fatty acids, sulfur, minerals, sulfur-containing amino acids, vitamin K, vitamin A, vitamin D. And so at first I had a list of foods that I wanted to be stressing in my diet. And then as I realized I wanted to teach this to other people,
yes,
I had to sit down and think of okay, I need a way of organizing this that I can easily teach, and then people could easily go home and implement. And so actually, there was a process from when I first reorganized things into my long list of foods to I got to teach this in clinic to my patients, and then to the world. That would take about 1.5 years to really clarify how to teach this, and then some studies of, it's really interesting. When I started to do the clinical trials, I had to demonstrate the safety of this crazy diet that I have.
Isn't that something?
Really, in all fairness to my IRB, it made a lot of sense because this diet was quite different than the USDA My Healthy Plate diet.
Yes.
And so,
yes,
understandably, they said, well, there is no safety data other than you, so show us that it's safe. So that, and that was, I really have to give my kudos to the university because they funded that little tiny research kind of thing that we did, which is 24-hour nutrient analyses of the one person who was eating that way, me, over a week. And then we had to enter all of this data into this fancy scientific data analysis, and that looked then at the vitamins, all of the vitamins and minerals that we have recommended daily allowances for, and then a bunch of nutrients that we don't really have recommended daily allowances for, but we know what the average intake for the country is.
Okay.
And then we had to conduct that little mini study on me, the analysis, and present that back to the committees that were going to have to decide my dietary approach was going to be safe, so we could actually conduct the study. And I've since hired the nutritionist who did that analysis for us. And she's been doing this for a long time, probably 30 years. And her observation in her report was, of all the years that she's done this nutritional adequacy analyses, so that's, how many vitamins and minerals, all that stuff that you have.
Yes.
This was the most nutrient-dense diet she'd ever analyzed.
Oh my gosh.
That's
See,
pretty
that's,
cool.
yeah,
And
that's
that's just from the
beautiful.
food, to say nothing of,
Right.
the targeted supplements I took on top of that.
Yes.
So,
Well,
Yes.
I wanted to say thank you so much for for recording all of this information and teaching it. You know, that work of bringing it all together and then sharing it with the world and helping to help, millions, like Michelle said.
Well, and
That's just
Calvin,
heartwarming.
let's remember that all of this work was being done from a tilt-recline wheelchair. So let's add in the exhaustion, fatigue, frustration, the insomnia. I'm sure that Dr. Wahls, you were dealing with
brain
a
fog.
lack of sleep and brain fog. Absolutely. I mean, we know what it's like, and that's why, Kevin, you and I are here each podcast, because we know what it's like to have to journey through that to get just one answer that will help us find the next answer, which will help us. And so add my name to the list of you and the millions of others who have found Dr. Wahls' work and used it as hope, number one, and an asset toward our recovery, number two. So thank you to the University of Iowa for taking the risk.
So the university did this. The Iowa City Veterans Affairs, supported giving me time to do that initial study. So there's, and did you know, Michelle, that this was funded by Ashton Embry's little charity, Direct MS?
No,
and
I
so
did not.
my initial study was funded in part by the Canadians. So we always thank the Canadians at my seminar for funding my work originally.
That's wonderful.
So he's given me funding for several little pilot studies, and we're still writing papers from these original studies.
Oh,
so
phenomenal, Dr. Embry.
yes, you have to give
great.
a lot of thanks to Ashton Embry, and you might think about having him on your podcast. Although his passion's about MS, there's considerable overlap, and he absolutely is one of the early pioneers whose work helps get this message that nutrition is really important to the brain.
Well, and you have just brought up, Dr. Wahls, a really important point, because what I hear, my work is in functional nutrition, and now I just happen to have a focus on neuronutrition and autoimmune nutrition. And people come with their labels to the door and say, well, I've got Parkinson's, well, my child has autism, well, I've got ADHD, and I just like to tell them and erase the labels and say, we're dealing with the function of your brain, and you still need to feed it. It doesn't matter where that weaker link was that you're showing and thus labeled with a deficit, but your brain needs to be fed, and we all do well on a similar menu, like you have developed, like Kevin extols in How to Feed a Brain. I mean, there are essentials we all need. It doesn't matter the label. It doesn't matter if it's Parkinson's or MS or a brain injury. And that's why I love that you're also working with Dr. Laura Mischley on the Parkinson's and MS studies. I mean, Dr. Mischley has done so much writing and research in this department. I'm thrilled that the great minds are coming together and publishing. Like you said, there's so much coming out now.
Yeah, and Dr. Mischley reached out to me, so we've been having conversations, trying to collaborate. We've been trying to get some grants together. Our grants haven't yet been funded together, but we are still finding ways to collaborate.
Good.
So we will continue that work together, because she's doing some great stuff. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, I would love an introduction to Dr. Emery. We would love to have him on the podcast.
I'll just wave my Canadian flag. I'm sure that will open the door.
Yeah. He's been doing this a long time. He made observations in his journey to help his kids. And as he helped his kids recover, fortunately, his wife said, we have a duty to the world. So they created his website, and it was, I found his website, actually I was referred to Dr. Embry and Dr. Cordain by my Cleveland Clinic neurologist. And that was back in 2002 that they told me about him. And that's when I switched over to the paleo diet. And the kinds of stuff that Ashton Embry talked about wasn't enough to recover me, but it certainly began me on the journey of I can take more control. It's time for me to start reading and start being more engaged. And so
exactly,
it was
right.
critical.
Yeah. And isn't that, I mean, every time someone takes base knowledge and adds to it, because of personal experience, we grow. We all grow. And it's for the benefit of all of us. So there isn't one answer. You know, Kevin and I have talked about that. There isn't just one right way because everyone is so unique. And so Dr. Lauren Cordain, I had heard him speak at the Institute for Functional Medicine.
So let's back up a little bit.
What's
Dr.
that?
Lauren Cordain,
Yes.
I just want to explain to our audience, Dr. Lauren Cordain developed the paleo diet and did a bunch of studies on Paleolithic nutrition and
decades ago.
Yes, and how eating according to how our body has evolved. He basically kind of was the founder of evolutionary nutrition. Eating the way we have evolved means that our digestive system has evolved to eat that way, you know?
Yes.
And so I think that's a great starting point. And it was for me, you know?
Yes.
So Dr. Wahls, you and I have very similar stories. I also was introduced to the paleo diet and I'm like, cool, this makes sense. And I hopped into it. And then I was introduced to functional medicine and began to recognize that like it's all about feeding the cells of the nervous system.
Ding.
Boom. So there you go. So
yes.
like Michelle said, you know, it doesn't matter if it's Parkinson's, MS, ALS, like what we're talking about is the neuron, the cell. And so it's really beautiful. You did a lot of the work, you know, you got all these studies together. You had the resources to put it all together, do the research, and then share it with the world. And teach people how to feed these cells. So thank you again.
So Dr. Wahls, could we talk about those gaps you identified?
Sure.
That you know you filled and had the food serve your body. Please.
So when we look at a lot of paleo eaters, and I was following Dr. Cordain's work, he really emphasized what to remove and then said eat meat and some vegetables. And didn't really give a lot of guidance, but there's a lot of discussion about no grain, no legumes, no dairy.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big change for me as a vegetarian.
Yes.
And when I look at many of my paleo friends, it's a lot of meat, a variety of vegetables, but not many usually. And they may have carbohydrates from what they consider to be safe tubers.
Okay.
But there's not a lot of guidance about how you should structure what to eat. There is a lot of guidance about what to avoid.
Yes.
But not a lot of specific guidance about what to eat. And most people don't have any sense of what are the nutrients that our mitochondria need, our cells need. And so once I had created from all of my reading of the basic science, here are the specific nutrients. I go back and start looking. So things I'm looking for are minerals.
Yes.
I'm looking for fat-soluble vitamins.
Yes.
You realize that we may think we're eating a lot of beta-carotene, but you have to have your body convert that beta-carotene to retinol, which is vitamin A.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, thank you.
And of course, there's a lot of variability in the efficiency of our ability to make that conversion. Just like there's a lot of variability in the efficiency of how well we process, eliminate toxins in those enzymes. There's variability in the enzymes that do some things called methylation. That is how we use the B vitamins.
So let me back up a little bit.
Go ahead.
Vitamin A, what most people, you know, usually when you see on a label, it's like a good source of vitamin A. It's usually talking about beta carotene, which
Yes.
is the precursor to the active form, which is retinol. And
Yes.
what I mean by the active form, that's the form that our bodies are able to use. So precursor means something that creates something else. And when we're looking at beta carotene, that converts into retinol, but as Dr. Wahls is saying, that conversion isn't necessarily very good.
So I would also say that, as I'm looking at how I can improve my mitochondrial function, that meant I really need to think about minerals. I need to think about B vitamins, and so you can take the B vitamins, but having more organ meats, more shellfish, really help with your mineral status. Having seaweed and sea salt help with the mineral status. Making sure you have enough acid in your stomach so you can absorb those minerals, absorb that protein.
Yes, yes.
Most paleo eaters are not tuned in to eating shellfish and organ meats on a regular basis.
Yes.
Last night we made liver and onions with lamb liver, and my daughter was saying like, "Oh my God, I can't wait to eat your liver and onions." And what people don't, we all seem to think that liver and onions taste terrible, and like prepared properly, they are so delicious, so wonderful. And we were laughing, saying, Zeb, I was not thinking here. I should have been set up, had my phone charged, so I could have recorded you talking about how delicious liver and onions can be. So
that's beautiful. I made a liver for breakfast the other day, and I posted a picture about it. I'm like, yeah, get your organ meats, liver for breakfast.
Well, liver and
actually got quite a good response on that. People were like, yeah, organ meats. Show me how to do this, because every time I cook them, they're terrible, but I know they're really, really good for me.
Yes.
So we're making the shift there.
Yes, it's good to see. And Dr. Wahls, tell us why the beautiful combination of cooking liver in a good fat, with a sulfur-rich onion is a fabulous combination.
So the onions have a lot of organic sulfur compounds that will help with all the chemical processes that require sulfur as the way of removing internal and external toxins. Because like any chemical factory, there's some untoward byproducts, and so even our own chemical processes do have some chemical trash we have to get rid of. And then on top of that, we have all of the chemicals that have been invented that have greatly improved the quality of our lives because they've made food more efficient, manufacturing more efficient, energy production more efficient. And so, yes, that has improved the quality of our lives, but it's also introduced a lot of chemicals into the environment. Now you go to China, and they have a terribly polluted environment with major health consequences.
Yes.
And we had that going on here in the U.S. until the mid 70s. We had rivers that were on fire, and we had all these toxic dumps. And President Nixon, he did some great things, and one of them was establishing the Environmental Protection Agency, which over the years greatly cleaned up our air, our drinking water, our streams, and that did reduce the chemical exposures. It certainly has been very helpful. But again, depending on your genetic makeup, you may be more sensitive to the accumulation of the chemicals that we encounter every day. And if you got a brain problem, you're probably one of those folks who is more sensitive to all of these chemicals, and you need to boost those detox processes. And also say, since the 70s, we're eating fewer and fewer vegetables.
Yes, isn't that so?
Yeah, and I wanted to say about removing toxins, that was a huge part of my therapy as well, is removing all the possible toxins that were coming in. And I'm like looking at my toothpaste, I'm like, I don't know what half the stuff on here is. my deodorant, like all sorts of different places where toxins can be coming in. And then at the same time, detoxifying
Yeah.
with sauna therapy. And I actually heard while you were giving your seminar recently, you were talking about, or I got a call from Brian Richards from Sauna Space. I got
Oh
a
yeah, great
text.
guy.
Great guy, and he was like, you and Dr. Wahls use the same sauna. Use my sauna. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So I use that every day, and I hear you do too.
It's a great, it's a lovely product. And originally I had terrible heat intolerance, which is very common in the MS world. But
Okay.
what is remarkable is 6 months into my very intense reorganization of my diet and lifestyle, my heat intolerance went away. And I thought I was doing well, so I thought, okay. I went to a business that had saunas, went into their saunas, and was in the sauna for 45 minutes, no problem. So I went home and ordered a sauna. Said, okay, we'll add that to the daily regimen as well. And so that's been something that is a very regular part of my regimen. For years, I did saunas every day. And then, now I do them every weekend. When I did my book tour, I was back to saunas every day because that's such a toxic experience.
Oh,
it's all
wow.
that air travel.
Okay, right. Now, those of us who don't have a sauna in our front room cabin, what's an alternative people could consider using other than sweating through exercise?
So there's one that my veterans, because for years I took care of people who are living on food stamps who have real economic constraints, and so they taught me about the car sauna.
Oh, okay.
What you do is you don't want a new car, so you want an old car that doesn't have any of that new car smell.
This is gonna outgas like
okay,
new
so
car,
right. So you're with me. You park it in the sun.
Okay.
You need a big glass of water. You roll up the windows.
Okay.
And you wait for the sweating to begin, because this will become very hot. And you might want to have a thermometer so you know what the temperature is, so you don't go over, say, 140 in Fahrenheit. And I think that's 40 degrees, might be 60 degrees Celsius. But you'll have to check the Celsius, but it's 140 Fahrenheit. And then just sweat away. If it starts getting close to 140, open up the door a little bit, let it cool off, and then you can be in your car sauna as long as you'd like.
Okay.
Nice.
So 140 Fahrenheit, 140 Fahrenheit, 60 degrees Celsius, and you just sweat for however long you want to.
However long you want to, and have lots of water. You want to have lots of water in there, and you really want to be sure you don't have any new car smell.
Yes,
right.
If it's a new car smell, this is not the right car sauna for you. You got to get an older an older beater car.
You need a beater.
A lot of us, we go outside, we complain when we sweat. The reality is we should go outside and sweat. Get rid of the air conditioning.
Sweat
go outside
every
and sweat.
day. That's important. Sweating is our biggest detoxifying. Our skin is our biggest detoxifying organ, and utilizing that. We should sweat every day, though.
Sweating's a good thing, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the car sauna, that's really getting heat shock protein, or you're getting the heat going on. Heat shock protein stimulates the mitochondria and other things. What we also get from the sauna space, or the near infrared, is near infrared light therapy, and
which
that's
is also very good.
Cool. Yeah, it's very good as well. That stimulates the mitochondria. And I'm glad you love those guys. They're great. In fact, if you use the coupon code FEEDABRAIN, you'll get a 5% discount.
It's a lovely company. I love the fact that it's in small town, Midwestern Missouri. So I'm very happy to help support them as well.
Yes, always. So we've got gaps that we've filled with fat-soluble vitamins, sulfurs, EFAs, minerals,
and lots more vegetables.
Okay, and so tell us about why. Why is it important that people eat their vegetables, please?
So we evolved eating vegetables. we came from the primates eating tons and tons of vegetables. The meat does give us more protein, but our gut is used to having, and our cells and our DNA is used to seeing these phytonutrients, these antioxidants and small compounds that come into the plants. The bacteria in our guts help digest the plants as well, and create metabolites, or smaller molecules that will get into our bloodstream. We know from many epidemiologic studies that these compounds are critical to the health of your retina, so you can see. And the retina is the same thing as brain tissue.
Yes, it is.
So whatever nutrients are critical for your retina are critical for the rest of your brain.
Cheers
Isn't that
to that.
something? So if there's a decline in the health of the retina, would you be able to say straight away that there's a decline in brain tissue?
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that something?
What do you think about a detached retina?
That's a structural issue. That's a structural issue, but it means that the retina health is poor, and so it can the ability to have shear forces damage it increase as the overall health of the retina declines.
Right. And thus the brain and the rest of the body.
Correct. So you can think of the eyes as a window, a wonderful window to the health of your brain and the health of your body that we can look into and observe these findings. A really very exciting thing that we've done this year in our research team, we've added a postdoc fellow who is an ophthalmologist, and then we've added neuro-ophthalmology, one of the best researchers in the country. And so as people are coming through my MS study, we now also take an hour to do a battery of eye exams and retina exams to see what the impact of nutrition is on all these retinal measures. And in fact, this is the first study that Dr. Carter knows of that has combined all of these ocular measures at once, and in particular added a dietary component to see what happens over time, and what happens over time if you change the diet.
This is beautiful. You're mirroring what a lot of the guests we've had on the podcast are saying. I would love to introduce you to Dr. Charles Shidlovsky as well. He has. I was just in his clinic in Dallas, and man, this is one of the best optometry offices I've been at, where he's looking at the structure but also the function of the eye. And as you said, the eyes are a beautiful window to the brain.
Oh, unbelievable. Thank you for expanding your research to include this. And Kevin goes on very eloquently about how the cranial nerves affect brain function. So, I mean, this is all coming together so beautifully. I can't wait to see what comes out of this research, Dr. Wahls. As my 10-year-old, well, he was 8 and 9, 8 years, he used to say, well, I don't understand. It's all connected. I mean,
it is all connected.
Well, and all of these doctors, because I would be having to see a doctor for this and a doctor for that. He just thought it was so ridiculous at the age of 8 that, well, why do you have to go to all these people? I mean, it's all connected. And I mean, it just summarized it for me there. It's like, yes, actually, you're right. You're right. So let's connect the dots, Dr. Wall. We're going down from what we put into our mouths, how it affects our brains. You started talking about the veggie consumption and the effect on our gut, the bacteria that create the metabolites. That's what we call our microbiome. And the impact of the microbiome on our entire physiology is significant. Research is finally showing that. Could you explain a little bit to our audience about the significance of eating veggies and why we want to feed that microbiome?
So the bacteria, yeast, and single cell parasites, protozoa, they've been in our guts for probably, as long as there have been mammals around. We'll call that about 500 million years. And we pass the bacteria mom to her offspring as the offspring is born through the birth canal.
Yes.
And why this? Go ahead.
Real quick, you said parasites, and
Yeah,
it
isn't that
sounds like
shocking?
you're talking about parasites in a good way, and I wanted to
Yeah,
clarify that.
parasites in a good way. Evolution has a way of making what we cannot avoid critical to thrive, and that we utilize there are no freeloaders in life, because there's no reproductive advantage to a
So what do
freeloader.
you mean by that?
If it's not helpful, if it doesn't contribute to the success of my being able to have kids and rear those children to adults so they have kids, then that trait fades over thousands of generations.
Okay.
So what you're saying is evolution's set up for all the organisms that rely on each other to thrive.
Correct. And if they aren't thriving, you can't compete as well in an environment where there's limited resources. So eventually those traits and those attributes will fade away when you're looking at over 500 million years, folks. We've had a long time of having to compete to survive. The three of us, we each have about 25,000 genes.
Okay.
Our gut microbiome has 9 million genes.
Wow.
Of which we think 5 million are not duplicated. So we're comparing 5 million genes that help us run all the biochemical processes that need to happen versus our 25,000 genes.
Oh, isn't that something?
And
having the right mix is so important, which means we got to be eating the stuff that our ancestors would have been eating over these last 500 million years, which would have been food, vegetables, lots of vegetable material, a little bit of meat episodically when we could capture it.
Yes.
I would have had some, if your ancestors would have experienced winter, you would have had some level of ketosis during that winter time period. And then you would have come out of ketosis back into a low glycemic index food. We had lots of vegetable material and episodic meat, which you might have gorged on when you had it, and then you'd have to go back to lots of vegetable material. There are societies that are mostly meat-based, but they're raw meat eaters.
Right. Okay.
And that's a different product than our cooked meat. But even they still have summer for a couple months.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so when you were talking about the microbiome and how they have way more genes than we do, and it's a symbiotic relationship, meaning one helps the other. They help each other up. I was thinking, all right, well, we need to feed different kinds of microbiome like our ancestors. So how many different species of plants and vegetables did our ancestors consume?
When I look at that literature, it's 200 different species of plants.
Wow.
And compare that today.
In my group classes, I asked people how many different plants they're eating. And, maybe carrots, maybe peas, maybe celery, soybeans, maybe. So 3 or 4, 5, occasionally I can get them up to 7. Wow. And then they're shocked. I say, okay, the goal is 200. And they're like, oh my God. And the goal is 9 cups of vegetables. And they're like, per week? I said, no, per day.
Per day. Okay. And so go on, finish that.
They're shocked. They're like, oh my God, you got to be kidding.
And tell us, please, it's not just 9 cups of vegetables. It's 3 plus 3 plus 3. Tell us more.
Correct. So to help people get that diversity and to get the things that, I think science says our brains need, we do 3 cups of green leafy things. And so it's green leafy and not poisonous. That's all that you need to know.
And not iceberg lettuce, not iceberg lettuce.
But it should be really green. If it's white, it's not in the green category. It should be really green. And the more deeply green it is, the better it will be for you. And 3 cups, it's a dinner plate covered, heaped high so you can't see the bottom. And then the next thing would be the sulfur-rich vegetables, so out of the cabbage family, onion family, mushroom family. And I really like mushrooms, but again, you still have to be sure you have a good identification, they're not poisonous.
Sure.
And that you want to work with your nutritionists that are in your part of the world, because I don't want you importing food to meet the categories I'm talking about. You should have cabbage family, onion family, mushroom families that are native to your culture and your regions of the world.
Very good point. Yes.
So there's no need to be importing stuff. And then the next category is deeply pigmented. And again, I prefer to have things really very simple. You take the food item, you cut it with your knife, and you're like, is there pigment all the way through? And I don't call white a pigment.
Yes.
So your apple, red on the outside, white on the inside, does not count. The pear does not count in this category. The banana does not count. You can have those foods after you've had your 9 cups.
I love it. I love it. Thank you.
So if you cut things all the way through, like carrots, beets, peppers would qualify for that category. Berries, peaches, plums, kiwi, grapes would qualify. Green grapes, red grapes, black grapes, because that pigment is a nice marker for the antioxidants and the polyphenols that really help set a lot of the signaling to create favorable gene expression would be a good way of thinking about that.
Okay.
It does many great things for us, but the simplest thing to imagine is all these vegetables help turn the health-promoting genes on, turn off the disease-promoting genes. They make sure you have the building blocks for some of the basic things you got to do. Build stuff to run your body, build stuff to run your brain, eliminate the trash that you're supposed to eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, if you come to my seminar, I go over in more detail what all these food categories do. But in the really big picture, it helps you run the chemistry of life, and it helps feed the microbiome to fertilize the health-promoting ones. If you eat a lot of sugar, you fertilize the disease-promoting microbiome that confuses your chemistry.
So you're saying eat your vegetables before you eat your fruits.
Absolutely.
Because your heaping plate with 3 + 3 + 3 looks a lot different than the USDA My Plate, as you mentioned earlier in the interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yes.
the common recommendation in North America is fruits and vegetables, because that is one category in the Canadian Food Guide and the American Food Guide. And, I find it very difficult to convince people because, of course, they love the sugary taste of their fruits. And they say, well, I'm following the guidelines. And so I have to ask them, well, how do you feel? Is this working for you? And the answer is no. Okay, I've put on a lot of weight. Yeah, you can't keep eating all of that sugary fruit and expect to get the same benefit as eating a pile of collard greens or chard.
And
so,
how is it affecting the population, right? The My Plate or the food pyramid guidelines, pretty much looking at it, it kind of steered us in the wrong direction, I'd say.
Well, and fortunately, they're recognizing, the capital T, they are recognizing the issues, because the Canadian government is creating the Canada Food Guide, and there are articles. There was one in the Globe and Mail paper just last week about how what kind of changes we're going to see. And I always like this foreshadowing. The media gets a hold of it and introduces just a little bit to the public before the big announcement comes. And I would really like it to look a lot like the 1942 Food Guide, which was essential fatty acids and organ meats.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know if we're going back.
What is interesting, at least in the U.S., before World War II, we didn't have people with conflicts, financial relationships to agriculture or the food industry that were involved in the creation of the food pyramids. And after World War II, we had made this big industry that had sprung up to feed the massive amount of military personnel. And of course, they don't want to disappear, so they needed to convince the American public to quit cooking at home, buy this packaged food, and so that's how we ended up down this slippery slope.
Thank you for saying that, Dr. Wahls. That and the introduction of herbicides, defoliating products for the home consumer. That was all a fallout from the war.
All fallout from the chemical military compound, the chemical weapons, again, that were brought back home, and the chemical industry being, innovative in wanting to have financial success. They saw a big market and marketed to the public all these products that we had lived without for a long time, but now they convinced us that we would need to have golf course type lawns and that we would need to use these germ warfare agents in our homes and business environments.
Thank you for illuminating the financial interests in our dietary recommendations and how that is formed. That's so powerful. We're coming close to the end here, but I wanna bring up ketogenic metabolism. I'm actually going to be speaking at KetoCon September 1st, so coming up here really soon.
Very exciting.
I'm very excited for it.
So I can talk about the benefits, I can talk about the hazards, I can talk about how you can get yourself into deep trouble. And,
can you do that in 5 minutes?
Yes, absolutely. So ketosis, great for seizure disorder, great for brain cancer, great for dementia. The problem with ketosis, I see a lot of folks who focus on what to remove. You add up all these fats, and there's very little attention to making sure you have a healthy microbiome or that you have a nutritionally adequate ketogenic diet. As far as I know, I am the only person who's written about ketosis who actually do nutritional research, who actually then did a nutritional analysis of the dietary guidelines that they advocate to verify your brain's going to get everything that you need, your microbiome's going to get everything that it needs, and you could still thrive. Even so, I've sort of backed off, and my advice is that based on the review of the research, if you go in a low glycemic index diet, you get similar outcomes to the ketogenic diets in the studies that have compared the low glycemic index diet to the ketogenic diet. Okay. So the benefit for ketosis over low glycemic index might be there. It's not quite so clear. If you're going to do ketosis, I want people to use my plan because I know that one's at least nutrient dense. Okay. The dairy-based one, I think, is an invitation for trouble.
This is great because I want to talk about how ketogenic diet shifts the gut microbiome profile.
Yes.
Profoundly, right. And what we can do to still be giving our microbiome what it needs for optimal function.
So if you do a dairy-based ketogenic diet, then you have only about 25 grams of carbs, and your microbiome will be starved, and they will suffer greatly. If you do my version of the ketogenic diet, you can tolerate 50 to 80 grams of carbs. They'll have to still be very low glycemic index, and your microbiome has a much better chance of thriving. And I talk about you got to poop snakes. If you aren't pooping snakes, your microbiome is suffering. And then we need either more non-starchy vegetables, more resistant starch or flaxseed pudding, so you can be pooping those snakes. And if the snakes get into your pants, you were too aggressive. You got to back off on the fiber.
Thank you for that, Jim. That a little bit of levity goes a long way, and
That's kind of a perfect way.
Oh my gosh!
If you
Yes.
come to my seminar, you see me demonstrate pooping on stage and inspecting your poop and what to do if you're pooping rocks or snakes or putting your tea.
I saw a Facebook Live with you and V, Diane Capaldi, Paleo Boss Lady, wearing the poop hat and talking to poop.
I love it.
It's so important that we pay attention to that.
It really is. It really is such an excellent diagnostic tool. Just, hey, how you pooping? Check it out. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I love about functional medicine is that there is focus, there's discussion, and there is that question straight up: how's your poop? And anybody who's informed knows, hey, you've got my best interest in mind. And for those who are new to functional medicine, they're a little bit uneasy talking about the back end, but it is critical to overall health. Dr. Wahls, thank you for a great laugh, for great information. And we know you've got research meetings all day today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for fitting Adventures in Brain Injury into your day.
Well, I hope it works that sometime the two of you come to our seminar. I think it would be a very interesting, engaging event for you.
Phenomenal.
Would absolutely love to at some point. So is there anything else you would like to talk about?
We're recruiting right now for multiple sclerosis. You need to live within 500 miles of Iowa City, Iowa, and have fatigue. We observe the current diet, then we randomize them to the Swank diet or the Wahls diet. And we know that both diets have been helpful in the studying of MS. So this is a great study. People will have 4 visits over 36 weeks. We're also working towards having a similar study for ALS, where we would enroll people and just put them on the diet for 12 weeks and assess what that impact. I'm hopeful that study will be up sometime in the next 12 months. So very, very exciting stuff.
And are you taking Canadians in these studies? Are you accepting Canadians?
So I can't take them in this because they aren't within 500 miles. However, in the links that you have, we have some survey-based studies that we're doing with Bastyr. And so people from all over the globe could be in that study, in both of those studies, one for MS, one for Parkinson's. And I do hope Canadians and anyone from all over the world will be in those studies. And I think we're like well over 1,000 in each of those studies. And they'll go on for 5-10 more years. So yes, Canadians, please come be part of those Bastyr studies.
And Bastyr, that's in Oregon.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you again, Dr. Wahls. And, just so appreciated it. And, we'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. All right, guys, that is all for this episode of the Adventures in Brain Injury podcast. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you want more episodes like this, head over to iTunes or head over to adventuresinbraininjury.com/podcast for all the podcasts. And sorry, iTunes, Stitcher, or any of them. You got it. And but head over to iTunes and leave us a review. It means so much. Really appreciate it. And let's see. And if you want to support this work, head over to our Patreon page and throw in $1 or $2 or more if you'd like.
Thank you.
And anything else?
Kevin, we have, though it's the summertime of 2017, there's just no rest for the wicked, and you have been busting your butt to get this book ready and putting your team together, and it's really exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's been a very fruitful summer thus far. Lots of work, yet very, very fruitful. I think the harvest should come in very nicely.
Thank you for saying so. Head over to feedabrain.com if you haven't already, and get on the list so that so that we'll be reaching out to you immediately when the book is ready, as well as grab the free supplement guide that we'll send you as well.
Yes. Get started on those targeted supplements.
Yeah. And this book, man, this is 6 years in the making. And it's all coming to fruition now, and it is being done in a very powerful way. I'm very excited.
Yes. It is wonderful to give birth, and now you, as a male, understand how much work it is. Yes.
Well said, Michelle. In fact, my author's assistant, I call her my book midwife.
Perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Yes, my boy child was birthed with midwives and two doulas who were friends of mine. I mean, we all need support, and we all need a little bit of help here and there. So, really, it's impossible to do independently. It is a collaborative effort, and I'm glad you've got a great team. It's all working out, coming together, and we get to see the fruits of your labor in just a few months.
Soon enough.
Yes. Well, let's wrap this up and get on with the day, out into the sunshine, soaking up some vitamin D. Well, you don't soak up vitamin D, but let's soak up some sunshine so we can make some vitamin D.
Nice correction, nutritionist over there. I love it. All right, guys, thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye for now.
Adios.
Someone take me to the hearse. Someone take me to a doctor, just take away this curse.